Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, a live preview of Digital Product Passport. We are reporting from Congress, the retail conference hosted by Svensk Handel, the Swedish trade federation, at Gothia Towers in Gothenburg a couple of weeks ago. We will hear from Magnus Nikkarinen, Director of Sustainability at Swedish Commerce, Lindfred, founder of Circularista and project manager for the Trace for Value DPP project, Helena Walker, CEO of Stockholm Fashion District, and Per Ljungberg, head of innovation at Svensk Handel and head of Congress. We will talk about key takeaways from the show, why data sharing is so crucial for a sustainable fashion future, and take a look at the first digital product passport for fashion. My name is Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind. All right, guys, Congress. Very special event. First time visit for me. It's a very interesting event in the fashion kind of retail space in Sweden. Not so much on the style side, even though there are some elements of style and fashion given the close connection to Swedish Fashion Council, who is still part of the Swedish Commerce organization, at least for now. They had some interesting guests and speakers, namely Dazed, which was prominent at the Swedish Fashion Council's Fashion X event in Stockholm last fall. So they had an interesting talk on youth culture, which I really enjoyed. There was also an interview with Malin Paulsson, VP of Digital at Supreme, Swedish woman based in New York. Very fascinating insights from kind of the world of streetwear and e-commerce there. But my interest was mostly on the data side. We've been covering the development of Digital Product Passport very closely here at Scandinavian Mind. Actually, one of our most listened to episodes last year was the interview I did with the people behind the Trace for Value project. It's a DPP project, kind of a consortium of organizations and brands, including Kappahl, Trust Trace, and GS1 Sweden. So anyone who wants to know like a deep dive into that project can go back to the episode called What is a Digital Product Passport? So the first time they announced Trace for Value, I think was in September last year. And now in March, they were unveiling this pilot live on Kappahl garments in the show. So Congress is kind of like Slush or any other tech conference. It's got both like a trade show floor with a bunch of booths and stuff, and then they have several stages where talks and panels and stuff happening. And on one of those stages, Sandra Roos, the sustainability director of Kappahl, showcased the DPP in front of the audience, scanning the QR code on the garment and watching the data appear on the screen in front of us. With her on stage was, of course, Staffan Olsson from GS1 Sweden. We've had him on the podcast. We've had him on several panels. He's a really thoughtful guy, and I would say the guy in the industry who knows most about the upcoming EU regulations for fashion. He seems to be, every time I meet him, he has new knowledge and insight about what's happening down in Brussels. So I wasn't surprised that the Swedish Commerce had gone for Staffan for a few sessions actually on one of the stages, talking about the need for data sharing, the need for transparency, and the need for new tools to share this transparency to the industry and to the consumers. And what I really enjoy about this discussion is that there is so many initiatives that are now tackling the fashion industry's problem at scale. These are solutions that can be implemented on a very broad scale in the industry. There are not just these fringe projects which I've been talking about before, these kind of small pilot projects that have little to no real impact on the fashion industry's carbon footprint. So this is really exciting stuff, I believe. And we'll get back to this later in the show when we interview Lindfred, the project manager for the Trace for Value project. Before we go on, I just want to plug, I did a couple of columns about the Congress. If you follow my newsletter Observations or read my column on the Scandinavian Mind website, scandinavianmind.com, you can read those reflections. The last of which I just published the other day was about what's happening on that trade show floor at the Congress. I was actually trying to walk around and see what all these tech suppliers are selling to the fashion and retail industry. It was, as I call it, a real mumbo jumbo mega bonanza of buzzwords. For every scalable solution, there were 2 power of data. For every premium personalization, there was 3 revolutionary tools. Add a few dozen of seamless experiences and countless of sustainable and circular and AI, and the buzzword bonanza was complete. So this revealed to me that there is actually kind of a disconnect between the tech industry, which we are actually promoting here at Scandinavian Mind, and the fashion and retail industry. I stood there watching all these colorful booths, just understanding that this is how the fashion and retail industry, this is their reality. So many buzzwordy, colorful, techie kind of companies trying to sell their solutions to the fashion industry. I'm just thinking, how is this ever going to play out? How is the fashion industry going to understand what's happening here? This is a huge problem, I feel, for the industry, and something we need to overcome. We need to bridge this communication gap. Anyways, that was my little reflection on what I call the communication issues for the fashion and tech industry. You can go online to our new website, our newly launched new website, just unveiled the other day. Still got maybe some work to be done around the bells and whistles of it, but we're super proud about the work that our creative director Erik Olofsson Haviko has done on our new website. So experience that on scandinavianmind.com, and there you'll also find the appropriate little box where you can sign up to our weekly dispatch newsletter. All right, let's get into some reporting. First of all, I just want to share a short conversation I had with Per Ljungberg. Per Ljungberg is the head of innovation at Svensk Handel, the Swedish Commerce, and he's also kind of the big general of the D-Congress conference. I caught up with him right after the last talk was done, before the big dinner, just to take the temperature of what he's feeling after doing the show. Here now, Per Ljungberg from Svensk Handel, Swedish Commerce.
This year's theme, Innovation for Impact, is so important, and we have to work together to change the retail industry, and that was the main purpose with this year's D-Congress.
Maybe it's too early to say, but are there any personal takeaways from these 2 days? Any insights gathered? Something you can bring with you to the next year?
That we have to work together, and that we all wants to work together, and that's, I think, is the most important take away from this year. But now I have to see every 60 sessions. It's so much to catch up the next couple of weeks. So because now I'm just going around and I'm happy and meet a lot of friends here, because it's like a huge community, 3,000 attendees, and a lot of them had met here every year for 10 years. So it's a great place to be. But I have to go home and see all the sessions and do my conclusions and the analysis and get back later, in fact.
Of course. On the topic of collaboration, I saw a couple of sessions on digital product passports. There's new stuff happening in the EU. Why has this been so important to cover in this year's session?
Because we need to change how we do businesses, and we need to work together. And I think the retail industry have a perfect opportunity to do that, because everyone have a connection to foods and fashion. So if you want to have the Swedes with you in this green new way, then you can start with retail.
All right, that was Per Ljungberg, head of innovation at Svensk Handel, Swedish Commerce. All right. So as I said, my main focus was on the stage where they were talking about the digital product passport and the need for transparency. There were some really interesting talks, not just from the fashion industry. There was one talk speaking about these issues from the pharmacy, the kind of medical industry. There was guys from Meds Apotek, which is kind of online pharmacy, and it's kind of interesting to hear him share many of the similar problems that the fashion industry is experiencing with kind of overproduction, lack of transparency between suppliers and retailers. Things show up at their warehouse. They're very poorly documented. People are still using like emailing, Excel back and forth. There are no real tools in place, and this just results in a bunch of products with some of them with expiration dates that just gets discarded and doesn't reach the consumer, and it's just sad. So that was interesting to see, and just shows that we need better tools across several industries, not just the fashion industry. So one of the guys that was very vocal about this topic was Magnus Nikkarinen. He's the director of sustainability at Swedish Commerce. Really thoughtful guy. I met him a couple of times now. So I caught up with Magnus in between sessions to get his take on why data is so important for Swedish Commerce. So here now, Magnus Nikkarinen, Director of Sustainability at Swedish Commerce, Svensk Handel. Enjoy. Then we just came off the stage, or you just came off the stage talking about the need for traceability and sort of data sharing in the value chain for fashion brands. We got some numbers saying it was at least 16% that was unaware of the new legislations from the industry. How do you advise the industry when you're talking about it? Do you see a lot of insecurity out there?
It is a lot of challenges, that's for sure. Within the EU then we are talking about maybe 20 to 30 new legislations coming, many of them affecting the textile and the fashion industry. So it will be a major challenge in order to make every part of the legislation understandable. We are working from the Swedish Trade Federation in order to make it more understandable, to get the knowledge, but also about trying to find solutions. And traceability throughout the supply chain is crucial, and digitalization is the mean for it.
And what's your view on the market? Do you think the tools are there? Are the solutions there? So it's more about implementing them, or do we need to invent new stuff?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's so much about inventing new stuff. One of the things we usually mention, it sounds like, but we need some future holistic thing that works. Take QR codes, for example. 1996 or 97, I'm not sure right now, but 1996, 97, they were developed. They've been around for quite some time, and now we're talking quite a lot about them to be a solution for the future. They've been around for quite some time and can be a really big help, of course.
So we talked about how to liken this. Is it a tsunami or a warm wave happening to the fashion industry? A lot of people think it's challenging, as we mentioned, but is there a positive upside to this as well?
Definitely. And I think it's of course all dependent on kind of company you are. We have to be honest, for small and medium-sized companies, it's a major challenge, as it is so much more administration, much more digitalization that is needed as well, and you need the resources for it. But hopefully there can be solutions so you in the legislation have longer implementation times for smaller companies, but for larger ones I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially for sustainable and future-looking companies.
And lastly, how can Svensk Handel help the industry? What are you focused on the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
It's definitely, first of all, of course, make sure that the legislation coming from EU is workable for the retail industry. That's, of course, very, very important. And then the next phase then is, of course, implementation in order to understand what is this meaning for the companies, what will be the impact and what do they need to do. And just to wrap it up, I think to digitalize, make sure that you have a better traceability throughout the supply chain, it's the way to go.
right, that was Magnus Nikkarinen from Swedish Commerce, the Director of Sustainability there. All right, let's get into this DPP thing. I thought was so fascinating. I actually had a chance to try it myself with my own phone in the GS1 booth on the trade show. I met up with Sandra Roos, the Sustainability Director of Kappahl, which has been on Transformation Conference. She's been on the podcast, one of the most thoughtful and insightful persons within the Swedish fashion ecosystem when it comes to sustainability. So she was really proud. She had some garments there. There was a label, I could scan them. The DPP showed up, and it showed me all kinds of data on how this garment was manufactured, where the raw material came from, and so forth. I think it's worth pointing out that this is just playing a small role in the DPP of the future. So the whole point of the digital product passport from EU side is to track the product in its entire life cycle. So what the Traceable Value project does is it tracks the products from the manufacturer to the brand, which is just one small part of it, obviously. And they don't track distribution or logistics or any of the kind. So there's just goes to show that there's so much left to be done. We in Scandinavian Mind were involved in a pilot project on kind of the distribution and retail side of things. There are other people working on the resale side. Obviously, recycling is a huge thing. These are all topics we'll come back at in the upcoming Transformation Conference, where we will try to gather as many of the DPP pilots happening in the Nordics today, but that comes later this year. For now, let's focus on the Trace for Value project. So I met up with Lindfred, really thoughtful kind of thought leader in the world of sustainability. She's founder of a company called Circularista, and she also serves as the project manager for the Trace for Value DPP project. Lynn knows this project in and out. Let's hear what Lynn has to say about this project and hear her explain it. Here now, Lindfred, founder of Circularista.
Yes, so we have piloted a digital product passport in textile and fashion. So what we did is to develop the entire technical architecture and infrastructure necessary to share data amongst actors in the value chain throughout a product life. So in this pilot we can add data throughout the life cycle so that we can share information with each other and enable more circular and sustainable value chains.
This is great. So we actually had an episode of our podcast covering the topic when you launched it back last year. What has happened since the first time you launched it? I know today, for example, you actually showed the actual DPP on the garment from Kappahl. Talk about where you are right now.
Yes, so we have now equipped 3,000 garments with the digital product passports from Marimekko's and Kappahl's product lines. So they are live and now in store being sold. And on these passports, you as a consumer can scan the QR code and instantly get information about the garment, how it's been produced, where it's been produced, what material is in it, like the circularity sustainability statement of the brand. So you can find like all necessary information. And that's quite a big step because, as I said before, it's not only showing information, it's also providing us with the architecture so that we can have a decentralized data storage and then make sure that the data is constantly updated in the digital product passport.
I thought it was very fascinating. It was the first time I actually saw a DPP kind of live. You had it up on the big screen, and Sandra Roos from Kappahl kind of scanned it. You could see it. Can you talk a little bit about specifically about the data you've chosen to kind of display in the passport, and what else can come in the future?
So we've based the data that we display on the ESPR's information requirements, so the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. So they have a bunch of requirements that we need to show. We've based it on those, but we also created our own data protocol in the project. And that data protocol includes almost 100 data attributes. So, for example, in the ESPR, they can have one information requirements, but it would probably be necessary for us to have like maybe 5 data attributes to make sure that we can be compliant to that requirement. But that's still a bit unsure today. So we need more clear directives from the ESPR, from the EU, to understand exactly what data we need. So this is a first version based on what information and requirements that are available to us today. In the future, this will be altered and we will get more clear directives, but I can more safely say that I think we cover almost all data points that will be necessary, but of course we need to validate this when the more clear directives come for textile products.
And talk about kind of the process of doing this. I find to me, it's really a statement of collaboration, because it's at least three organizations doing it. It's Kappahl and Trust Trace and GS1 Sweden, which we've also had on the podcast. Talk about some of the learnings, maybe describe the collaborators, but some of the learnings of doing this, because it's really different organizations has to come together to make this a reality.
Definitely. Cooperation has been key here, and there are actually more partners. So we have Marimekko as well, and then we have Swedish Institute of Standards, for example. So they've helped us, like we need all those competencies to develop the DPP system. So for example, we started out not knowing much. I mean, after we started, we got more information from the EU, more new versions of the ESPR came out, so we needed to include that throughout the process. But for example, when we did the data protocol, we needed first to just conclude what information requirements should we have, but also then what kind of standards do we need to be able to share the data and to be able to create an interoperable system. So there we had the help of GS1 to really map out what standards we could use, but we also had the help of Swedish Institute of Standards, who could tell us like what type of ISO standards that you could use or other type of standards. So this was very much a joint effort, so to speak. And I think that since it is, we don't really know exactly what the system will look like, we need all these good people that have a great mind, so that we can really found something that is sustainable and valid for the future as well. But I think that if you look at what's happening now in the EU, they are creating several teams and projects where I know Swedish Institute of Standards is part of creating more harmonized standards for the DPP. So it was also key, I think, to have those partners with us who are also involved in this in other projects and can make sure that we are up to date with the latest progress.
Right. So you have a couple of forward-thinking fashion brands on board. A lot of our listeners are from the fashion industry. I talk to a lot of brands that are kind of worried about what's happening. They're unsure of how to start interacting with this. How do you see this developing from the fashion brands' perspective? Because it's really them that are going to be able to or need to comply with these upcoming regulations. How do you see this play out? Any thoughts?
I think that it will be pretty complex in the beginning, but as soon as we have all the clear directives, it will be easier. But if you as a brand don't start now, it will be very difficult to keep up then later on. So I think that what we will see more and more brands do now is to try to identify the data that they need to gather, and then identify where the data is stored, and then identify how can we collect this data in the most efficient way possible. But I think we'll also see more and more players coming in and offering this digital product passport as a solution, DPP as a service. That will of course help the brands, but I think that they will have to do a lot of work internally and work with all the organizations or department in the company to really make sure that you can reach the goals that you need in order to create this DPP system. So I think that it will be a lot of work, but and I think that many companies are maybe not so mature in their handling of data, and mostly the smaller companies. I think that's something that the EU has highlighted as could be difficult, because this might mean that there's a bigger cost for those companies. So I think that we need to also figure out how to support all the actors into developing this system.
Well, you mentioned a very important point, I think, because this is something internally with the companies. It does not only cover one person or one department, let's say. You need to apply this throughout the organizations, and that to me is one of the biggest challenges. Just rounding off the interview, where do you think they should start? Aside from, I guess, covering or following your pilot projects, but where should you start as a fashion brand if you're a medium-sized one and need to start reporting your data?
But you need to start identifying the data requirements for you as a company, and then start to identify where is this data, where can we find it, because oftentimes the companies don't have this data for now. And then how can we gather it, and how can we share it in a standardized way? I think that's the most important thing. But I also want to say that I think it's super important to like, the GPP will be a requirement from the legislation, of course. You will get fined if you don't follow, if you don't comply. But I think it's also very important to see this as an opportunity to actually have more like data empowerment. That you as a company, if you gather this data, you can do so much with it if you analyze it and handle it correctly. We talked a lot about it on stage, like how can we enable circular economies? Like we need data to understand what the products are made of, how to take care of them, how to repair them, how to recycle them. I usually say that data is a prerequisite for circular economies, but I mean, if you just as a brand follow this is a law, we need to comply, and then not see the opportunities it could actually give you. I think that really see the value that this could provide for you as a company. You could improve your designs because you can gather data about the products, how the product is being used by the consumer, for example. And that's something that could make like both, it makes more financial sense, but also could improve the sustainability. So I think there's huge potential here, but if you just treat it as something you need to do and not use the data in the right way, that would be a shame, I think.
All right, that was Lindfred, founder of Circularista and project manager for the Trace for Value DPP project. So I wanted to end with kind of an overall reflection of what was happening on the show, and I turned to none other than our friend Helena Walker, the CEO of Stockholm Fashion District. Helena is obviously one of our close partners for Scandinavian Mind. We host Transformation Conference at Stockholm Fashion District. We also do some work for the district and for trade partners, the member organizations she also runs. So she's a close confidant, and we have several projects in the works together. So I wanted to really hear Helena's take on D-Congress, what it means for the industry, and what are the things that are cooking behind the scenes that she sees. So I caught up with her after the show was done, before the dinner was opened, to hear her thoughts. So here now, Helena Walker, CEO of Stockholm Fashion District.
My first impression is that I'm so impressed by the program, all the speakers, that they have Forbes, they have Vogue Business, Dazed, all those fashion editors, which I think is amazing to get here to Gothenburg. And all the other speakers, and also I'm very impressed of the companies, which I've been listening to. So it's a great program and a great congress, actually.
Well, that is great feedback coming from you. You organize these types of events yourselves all around Sweden. What do you think? Why is it important to do this type of event, D-Congress, about retail and technology?
My passion is in retail and international trade, and to meet like this and listening and learning so much, and also to meet companies and ask them questions, have the possibility to demonstrate new innovations. I think it's so great to be here and be calm, not doing the event yourself, and really take in all the information. And I think it's important to meet different parts of the retail segments. Actually, it's very interesting to discuss the future with the future thinkers.
Has there been any specific themes or technologies or findings that you've found during these days that you want to bring up?
my passion is international trade, so I've been listening to all the sessions about international trade and all the new green legislation and I think that is my take back, that getting connection with our EU commissioner and talking to her about the future, that has been the greatest thing for me.
Well, it sounds like a very important topic, and we covered that a lot in Scandinavian Mind. What's your take on the new legislation coming from the EU? How ready is the industry, and what can we do to help the industry, do you think?
The industry is not so ready yet, but also the Parliament haven't decided exactly how it's going to be. So, but I think the industry is really interesting to change, and definitely up here in the Nordics. So for us it's just a possibility, and that's my impression from all the talks as well. I think you don't have to wonder so much about it. You will just go with the flow, but listen and learn and go to all those sessions if you are a company. But one more thing, I think also we're talking a lot about economic sites and also trade sites from China, etc., coming in, and how is EU gonna handle that? And that is not really solved. So it's going to be interesting years coming up.
All right, that was Helena Walker, CEO of Stockholm Fashion District. After I did this interview with Helena, I just walked right through the trade show floor. The clock had turned 5, and I gotta say, it was the most explosive, kind of beer o'clock cocktail hour at a trade show I've ever seen. I guess the e-commerce people and the tech people serving them are actually a very good fit, because they could party like there was no tomorrow. Also, shout out to Per Ljungberg and the guys behind the Congress for hosting a wonderful dinner in the evening with no other than Jonossi, one of my favorite Swedish bands, live performing after dinner. That was quite the experience. All in all, a very exciting experience being present at the Congress. I will definitely return, and it's very promising to learn that this very kind of commercial conference, kind of rooted in e-commerce and just pushing product and so forth, are focusing so much on innovation for impact, which was this year's theme. They're focusing so much on how to make the industry more sustainable, which we really enjoy. Anyways, don't miss our new website, ScandinavianMind.com. Don't miss our upcoming last edition of Virtual Creativity Live. It takes place on May 2nd at the Lyngen Co showroom. We just hosted our 4th edition the other day. It was really wonderful session on kind of digital fashion. I look forward to sharing that episode with you guys soon in this podcast feed. Do sign up to our newsletter. Visit ScandinavianMind.com. You'll find the sign up box there, and just enjoy the lovely new design of the website. Until next week, I'm Konrad Olsson. Goodbye.